At the family dinner table where Olivia Sterling announced she was divorcing her husband to marry her wealthy lover, she had no idea the quiet man she was humiliating in front of everyone, the man her entire family called a failure, was actually Nathan Cole, the multi-billionaire who owned Sterling Industries, the very company that employed her father, her brothers, and every single person bearing her family name. For 3 years of marriage, Nathan had hidden his true identity, playing the role of the struggling husband while secretly running a global empire worth $30 billion. But when Olivia chose that dinner to serve him divorce papers and flaunt her affair with Richard Blackwood, the man she believed was superior in every way, Nathan finally decided it was time to stop pretending. The woman who thought she was trading up had just abandoned the one man who controlled her family's entire livelihood. And what Nathan did next didn't just shock Olivia, it shattered everything she thought she knew about power, loyalty, and the true cost of betrayal. But what made Nathan hide his billions in the first place? What did Olivia's family do when they discovered the truth? And how far would Nathan go to teach the woman who threw him away the most expensive lesson of her life? The crystal chandelier above the Sterling family dining table cast dancing shadows across Olivia's face as she reached into her designer handbag, her perfectly manicured fingers wrapping around the manila envelope that would change everything. Nathan sat beside her, his worn jacket a stark contrast to the expensive suits her father and brothers wore, his silence as familiar as the contempt in her mother's eyes whenever she looked at him. "I have an announcement," Olivia said, her voice cutting through the chatter about quarterly earnings and corporate acquisitions. The entire Sterling family turned to look at her. Her father Douglas at the head of the table, her mother Patricia with her permanently disapproving expression, her older brother James, and her younger brother Tyler. Richard Blackwood, seated on her other side, placed his hand on her thigh beneath the table, a gesture of support that made her feel powerful and desired in ways Nathan never had. Nathan's hand stilled on his water glass, but he didn't look at her. He never really looked at her anymore, not the way Richard did. For 3 years, she had watched her husband drift through their marriage like a ghost, working odd jobs that barely covered his share of their modest apartment rent while she climbed the corporate ladder at Sterling Industries. Her family had warned her about marrying beneath her station, but she'd been young and foolish, believing love could conquer the vast gulf between their social classes. "Sweetheart, can't it wait until after dinner?" Patricia asked, eyeing Nathan with barely concealed disdain. "We're discussing important company matters." "This is important," Olivia insisted, pulling out the divorce papers. "Nathan and I are getting divorced." The silence that followed was deafening. Douglas Sterling's fork clattered against his plate. James leaned back in his chair, a satisfied smirk playing at his lips. Tyler looked between Nathan and Olivia with something almost resembling pity, but it was gone in an instant. "Finally," Patricia breathed, clutching her pearl necklace. "Olivia, darling, I'm so relieved you've come to your senses." Nathan still hadn't moved. He sat perfectly still, his dark eyes fixed on the wine in his glass as if it held answers to questions no one was asking. Olivia had expected hurt, maybe even anger, but his complete lack of reaction irritated her more than any emotional outburst would have. "There's more," Olivia continued, emboldened by her family's support and Richard's warm presence beside her. "I'm in love with someone else, someone successful, someone with ambition and drive." She gestured to Richard, who smiled at the assembled family with the confidence of a man who'd never known failure. "Richard Blackwood, the CEO of Blackwood Enterprises. We've been seeing each other for 6 months, and he's everything I deserve in a partner." Richard stood, extending his hand to Douglas. "Sir, I know this is unconventional, but I love your daughter. I can provide her with the life she was meant to have, the life she sacrificed when she married." He glanced at Nathan dismissively. "Well, when she made an unfortunate choice in her youth." Douglas shook Richard's hand firmly, his approval evident. "Blackwood Enterprises. Impressive operations, son. I've heard good things about your recent expansion into the Asian markets." "Thank you, sir. When Olivia and I are married, I'm confident Sterling Industries and Blackwood Enterprises can explore some mutually beneficial partnerships." The conversation flowed around Nathan as if he'd already ceased to exist. James launched into a discussion of potential joint ventures, while Patricia fussed over Olivia's ring finger, already planning the society wedding that would erase the embarrassment of her daughter's first regrettable marriage. Tyler remained quiet, stealing occasional glances at Nathan, whose stillness had become almost supernatural. Olivia pushed the divorce papers across the table toward her husband. "I just need your signature," she said, her tone businesslike now, efficient. "My lawyer says we can have everything finalized in 60 days since we don't have any real assets to divide. You can keep whatever's in our apartment. I'll be moving into Richard's penthouse downtown." Nathan's fingers traced the rim of his wine glass, a gesture so deliberate it made Olivia's skin prickle with unexpected unease. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, almost gentle. "Your entire family works for Sterling Industries." It wasn't a question, but Olivia answered anyway. "Yes, obviously. My father is the CEO, James is the CFO, Tyler runs operations. Why?" "And Sterling Industries," Nathan continued in that same measured tone, "was acquired 5 years ago by a private equity firm, Cole Holdings." Douglas frowned. "That's correct, but I don't see what that has to do with—" "The acquisition was completed 3 months before our wedding, Olivia." Nathan's dark eyes finally lifted to meet hers, and for the first time in their marriage, she saw something dangerous flickering in their depths. "Do you remember what I told you when we first met? About my family business?" Olivia's mind raced backward through time to the coffee shop where they'd met during her senior year of college. Nathan had been different then, or perhaps she'd been too infatuated to see clearly. "You said you came from money but wanted to make your own way, that you'd walked away from your family's expectations to find something real." "I did want something real," Nathan agreed, standing slowly. Despite his humble clothing, there was something commanding in the movement, something that made everyone at the table pay attention. "I wanted to know if someone could love me for who I was, not what I had. So I hid it all. The money, the power, the empire my grandfather built and my father expanded. I became nobody, just Nathan, the guy working construction and driving for rideshare companies while secretly running a $30 billion portfolio." Richard laughed, the sound sharp and mocking. "Come on, man, that's pathetic. What, are you having some kind of breakdown because your wife is leaving you for a better man?" Nathan pulled out his phone, typed something quickly and set it on the table. "Cole Holdings owns Sterling Industries. Cole Holdings owns the building where Richard's company leases its headquarters. Cole Holdings owns approximately 40% of all commercial real estate in this city, controlling over 300 companies across 17 countries." He looked directly at Olivia, and she felt her stomach drop. "My name is Nathan Cole. My grandfather founded Cole Holdings 70 years ago. I am not an employee, Olivia. I am the sole owner and chairman of the board." Patricia's laugh was nervous, disbelieving. "That's absurd. If you're this supposed billionaire, why have you been living in a tiny apartment and working menial jobs?" "Because I wanted to see if the woman I loved could stand beside me when I had nothing," Nathan replied, his attention never leaving Olivia's face. "I wanted to know if she'd be a partner in building something together, or if she'd only ever see me as a stepping stone to something better. I have my answer now." Olivia's phone buzzed on the table, then James's phone, then Douglas's, Patricia's, Tyler's, and Richard's. Across the dining room, the synchronized chiming created a digital chorus of incoming notifications. James picked up his phone first, his face going pale as he read whatever message had appeared. "Dad," James said, his voice strangled, "Sterling Industries just received a notice. Cole Holdings is exercising their clause to review all executive positions effective immediately. All current contracts are suspended pending." He looked up at Nathan, his earlier smugness evaporated. "Pending the chairman's personal evaluation of company leadership." Douglas grabbed his own phone, his hands shaking as he scrolled through what appeared to be the same message. "This can't be real. Nathan, if this is some kind of joke—" "It's not a joke." Nathan's voice remained calm, almost eerily so. "For 3 years, I've watched your family treat me like garbage in my own house. Every Sunday dinner was another opportunity for you to remind Olivia what a mistake she'd made, how she'd married down, how she deserved better. You never once asked about my dreams, my goals, my perspective. You assumed that because I didn't wear expensive suits or drive a luxury car, I had nothing to offer. Richard stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. Listen, if this is true, and I'm not saying I believe it, but if it is, then you need to know that Olivia and I are in love. Real love, not some fantasy based on lies and deception. Deception? Nathan's smile was cold. I never lied about who I was. I simply didn't advertise what I had. But you, Richard Blackwood, you've been lying to everyone at this table. He tapped his phone again, and Richard's face went from red to ashen. Your company isn't the success story you've been selling. Blackwood Enterprises is 3 months away from bankruptcy. You've been using Olivia to get close to Sterling Industries, hoping to convince her father to invest in your failing business ventures. The penthouse you mentioned? It's mortgaged beyond its value. The cars, the lifestyle, all of it is borrowed against debt you can't repay. Olivia turned to Richard, searching his face for denial, for outrage, for anything that would contradict Nathan's words. Instead, she saw guilt, fear, and the crumbling facade of a desperate man. Richard, tell them it's not true. I love you, Richard said, but his voice lacked conviction. We can still make this work, baby. If your family helps with the investment, get out, Douglas said quietly. Get out of my house. Richard looked around the table, finding no allies, no sympathy. He grabbed his jacket and left without another word, leaving Olivia alone with her family and the husband she'd just tried to discard. Tyler broke the heavy silence. Nathan, I never treated you badly. I actually tried to talk to you at these dinners, to get to know you. Does that count for anything? Nathan's expression softened slightly when he looked at Olivia's younger brother. It does, Tyler. Your contract is safe. In fact, I'm promoting you to interim CEO while I conduct a full review of Sterling Industries' leadership structure. You can't do this, Patricia shrieked, her composure finally breaking. We built this company. Douglas has given 30 years of his life to Sterling Industries. You built nothing, Nathan corrected. The Sterling family business was failing when Cole Holdings acquired it. We invested billions to save it, modernize the operations, and expand it into new markets. Your husband has been collecting a generous salary to manage what we built, and he's done adequate work. But adequate isn't enough when that same man spent 3 years treating me like dirt beneath his shoes while eating meals I paid for at tables I own. Olivia found her voice, though it came out small and broken. You paid for these dinners? Every Sunday for 3 years, Nathan confirmed. This house your parents live in? I bought it for them as a wedding gift to you, though you never knew. The promotion James received last year? I approved it. Tyler's graduate school tuition? Paid in full by a Cole Holdings scholarship he doesn't know exists. I tried to take care of your family, Olivia, because they were your family. Because I loved you. The past tense didn't escape her notice. Olivia stared at the divorce papers still sitting in front of Nathan, unsigned, suddenly seeing them as something else entirely. Not her ticket to a better life, but evidence of the worst mistake she'd ever made. Nathan, I didn't know. How could I have known? You could have asked, Nathan said simply. You could have wondered why a man with my education, my connections, was content working odd jobs. You could have questioned why I never seemed worried about money, even when paychecks were inconsistent. But you didn't ask because you'd already decided who I was based on what I appeared to be. You chose appearances over substance, status over character. James stood up, his expensive suit suddenly seeming like costume jewelry compared to Nathan's quiet authority. If you fire Dad, the company will suffer. He knows the business inside and out. The company will be fine, Nathan replied. I've been reviewing Sterling Industries' performance remotely for 3 years. I know exactly where the problems lie, where the opportunities are, and who the real contributors have been. Your father can stay on as a consultant if he chooses, at a significantly reduced salary. You, James, will be moving to a junior analyst position. You've been riding your father's coattails and your sister's last name for too long. Douglas aged 10 years in front of their eyes, his shoulders sagging under the weight of his spectacular fall from grace. All because I didn't treat you with enough respect. That's petty, Nathan. That's beneath you. This isn't about respect, Nathan said, though his voice hardened. It's about character. You didn't just treat me poorly. You raised your daughter to value the wrong things. You taught her that money and status matter more than integrity and partnership. You created a family culture where people are judged entirely by their net worth and social standing. That's not the kind of leadership I want running my companies. Olivia stood on shaking legs, moving around the table toward Nathan. Please, let's talk about this privately. Not here, not with everyone watching. Give me a chance to explain, to apologize. Nathan looked down at her, and Olivia saw clearly for the first time what 3 years of her contempt had done to the man who'd loved her. The warmth that had first drawn her to him was gone, replaced by something colder, more calculating. This was Nathan Cole, billionaire chairman, not Nathan, her husband who'd surprised her with coffee on hard mornings and listened to her complain about work despite his own exhausting days. There's nothing to explain, Nathan said gently. You've been clear about what you want, who you want. I'm not going to stand in your way, Olivia. I'm going to sign these divorce papers, and you'll be free to find whatever kind of life makes you happy. He picked up a pen from the table, signed his name on the required lines with swift, decisive strokes, and pushed the papers back to her. There, it's done. The finality of it hit Olivia like a physical blow. She'd expected him to fight, to beg, to do something other than simply let her go. Just like that. 3 years of marriage and you're giving up? You gave up 6 months ago when you started sleeping with Richard, Nathan replied, his tone matter-of-fact rather than accusatory. I knew about the affair, Olivia. I've known since the beginning. I had hoped you'd come to your senses, that you'd realize what you were throwing away, but instead you doubled down. You chose to humiliate me in front of your family rather than have an honest conversation. That tells me everything I need to know about who you've become. Patricia gasped. You knew about the affair and did nothing? What kind of man? The kind who wanted his wife to make her own choice, Nathan interrupted. The kind who refused to control someone through money or power. The kind who believed in second chances and growth. But everyone has limits, Mrs. Sterling, even me. Tyler stood, moving closer to Nathan with obvious hesitation. What happens now? To the company? To all of us? Nathan considered the younger man for a moment before answering. Sterling Industries will undergo restructuring. As I said, you'll serve as interim CEO. I'll be working closely with you over the next 6 months to implement new leadership training and identify talent that's been overlooked. Your parents can stay in this house for now, but they'll need to start thinking about their future because I'll be selling this property by year's end. James will keep his job, but will need to prove his worth without nepotism protecting him. And me, Olivia whispered, do I lose my job too? Nathan shook his head. Your position has nothing to do with your family. You've been good at your work, Olivia. That hasn't changed. But I am transferring you to our Singapore office effective in 2 weeks. You'll be leading the expansion project there. It's actually a promotion with a significant raise. I think the distance will be good for both of us. Singapore. Halfway around the world. Olivia realized with stunning clarity that Nathan was severing every connection between them with surgical precision, ensuring they'd never have to see each other again. That's cruel. That's generous, Nathan corrected. I could fire you for the affair. You violated company policy by sleeping with a potential business partner while representing Sterling Industries. I could make your life difficult in 1,000 legal ways, but I won't. You'll have your career, your independence, and the chance to build whatever life you want without me in it. What I won't do is continue to watch you despise me from across an office or pretend we can be colleagues after what you did tonight. Douglas finally found his voice again, though he sounded defeated. Nathan, son, if I had known... Don't call me son, Nathan said quietly, and what you would have done if you'd known is irrelevant. You should have treated me decently regardless of my bank account. That's what good people do. That's what I tried to show you, but the lesson didn't take. Nathan moved toward the door, pulling his phone out again to make a call. Olivia watched him speak in low tones as someone, probably a lawyer or assistant, coordinating the aftermath of the bomb he'd just dropped on her family. When he ended the call, he turned back to face them all one last time. A car will arrive in 15 minutes to take me to my actual home, Nathan said. I'll have the apartment cleared out this week. You can keep whatever's there, Olivia. The divorce will be final in 60 days as you requested. My lawyers will be in touch about the settlement, which will be fair but not generous. You wanted to end our marriage, so we're ending it on terms that reflect the reality of who contributed what. Wait, Olivia said, desperation clawing at her chest. Nathan, please. I made a mistake. Richard was a mistake. Can't we talk about this? Can't we try to fix what's broken? Nathan's smile was sad, tinged with something that might have been regret or relief. What's broken isn't our marriage, Olivia. What's broken is your value system, and that's not something I can fix. You need to figure out who you want to be, what kind of person you're proud of being. Maybe Singapore will help with that. Maybe distance and perspective will teach you what 3 years with me couldn't. You're punishing me, Olivia accused, tears streaming down her face now. You're using your money to punish me for leaving you? I'm protecting myself, Nathan replied. There's a difference. I gave you 3 years of my authentic self, and you found it lacking. You craved wealth and status more than partnership and growth. That's your right, but it's also my right to remove myself from a situation where I'm not valued. What I'm doing to your family's positions in the company, that's business. They'll be evaluated on merit, just like everyone else. What I'm doing with the divorce, that's mercy. I'm letting you go pursue whatever makes you happy. The doorbell rang, echoing through the tense silence of the Sterling home. Nathan walked to the foyer, and through the window Olivia could see a black luxury car idling in the driveway, a driver waiting patiently by the open door. This was really happening. The man she'd dismissed as a failure was leaving in a car worth more than she'd earned in 5 years, heading to a life she'd never even imagined existed. Nathan paused at the threshold, his hand on the doorknob. Goodbye, Olivia. I hope you find what you're looking for. I really do. But you won't find it in bank accounts or job titles or other people's perceptions. The only thing that matters is who you are when no one's watching, when you have nothing to prove and no one to impress. I thought I'd found someone who understood that, but I was wrong. He left without looking back, and Olivia stood frozen in the doorway, watching the taillights disappear down the street. Behind her, her family was in chaos, her mother crying, her father making frantic phone calls, James cursing under his breath, and Tyler staring at his phone with an expression of shock and awe as he presumably investigated Nathan Cole's actual identity and wealth. The divorce papers sat on the dining table, Nathan's signature black and permanent against the white paper. Olivia had thought this dinner would be her declaration of independence, her moment of choosing a better life. Instead, it had become the night she learned that the man she'd married, the man she'd abandoned, was everything she'd pretended to want, and she'd been too blind to see it. Richard had been a mirage, a carefully constructed illusion of success that crumbled the moment Nathan shone light on it. Her family's superiority had been built on the very foundation Nathan had provided, though they'd never known it. And she, Olivia Sterling, soon to be formerly Cole, had traded a real partnership with an extraordinary man for the fantasy of something she'd already possessed. The irony was devastating. She'd divorced Nathan to marry a billionaire, never knowing she was already married to one. She'd left him for a man with power, never realizing Nathan held more power in his little finger than Richard would ever dream of having. She'd chosen status and security, abandoning the one person who could have given her both those things and actually loved her besides. Patricia approached, placing a trembling hand on Olivia's shoulder. Sweetheart, maybe you can fix this. If you call him, apologize, explain that you were confused. He knew about Richard, Olivia interrupted, her voice hollow. For 6 months, he knew I was cheating on him, and he said nothing. He just watched me make a fool of myself, waited to see if I'd choose him, and when I didn't, he let me go. What kind of man does that? A man with options, Tyler said from behind them. He held up his phone, showing a Forbes article with Nathan's picture. A professional photo where he wore a custom suit and looked nothing like the humble man they'd known. Nathan Cole, 32 years old, graduated from Harvard Business School, took over Cole Holdings at 26 when his father retired. Worth approximately $32 billion. Philanthropist, business visionary, known for his ethical investment strategies and his refusal to court publicity. There are about 1,000 articles here, Liv. He's been featured in every major business publication in the world. How did we not know? Because we didn't look, Olivia whispered. Because we assumed. because we judged him based on his clothes and his job and his lack of bragging, and we never thought to dig deeper. James was pulling on his coat, his face red with anger and humiliation. I'm going to the office. There has to be a way to fight this. To appeal to the board or... There is no board, Tyler said, scrolling through his phone. Cole Holdings is privately owned. Nathan answers to no one. He is the board. And according to this, he's known for being absolutely ruthless when betrayed. There's a story here about a business partner who tried to embezzle from one of his companies. Nathan didn't just fire him. He systematically dismantled the man's entire career, ensured he'd never work in the industry again. Legal, but devastating. Oh God, Patricia moaned. Douglas, what are we going to do? If Nathan Cole wants to destroy us... He doesn't want to destroy us, Douglas said heavily. He wants to teach us a lesson, and he's right to do it. We treated him abominably, Patricia. All of us except maybe Tyler. We mocked him, belittled him, made him feel small in his own wife's family. What did we expect would happen? Olivia sank into a chair, still staring at the signed divorce papers. Nathan's signature was bold and clear, no hesitation in the strokes. He'd signed away their marriage as easily as he might sign a business contract, and that hurt more than anything else. She'd thought she would feel relief, freedom, excitement about her new life with Richard. Instead, she felt like she'd stepped off a cliff in the dark, only realizing too late that there was no ground beneath her feet. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. It was a wire transfer confirmation. Nathan had sent her exactly half of what he'd earned during their marriage from his odd jobs. $12,000. Not millions, not a lavish settlement. Just his honest earnings from the role he'd played. The message attached was brief. What I made while being nobody, enough to start over. Good luck, Olivia. The cruelty of it was exquisite. He was giving her exactly what she would have been entitled to if he'd truly been the struggling worker she'd believed him to be. No billionaire divorce settlement, no mansion or investment portfolio, just enough to get an apartment deposit and first month's rent. He was granting her the freedom she'd asked for while simultaneously showing her exactly what she was losing. Tyler sat down beside her, reading the message over her shoulder. He really loved you, didn't he? All of this, hiding his identity, living below his means, working those jobs. He did it because he wanted to be loved for himself, not his money. And you broke his heart, Liv. I know, Olivia whispered. God help me, I know. The coming weeks would bring more revelations about Nathan Cole. Olivia would learn that the construction company he'd worked for was actually owned by Cole Holdings, a training ground where he vetted potential employees by working alongside them. The ride-share driving had been his way of understanding urban transportation patterns before investing in a fleet electrification project. Every menial job had been strategic, purposeful, part of his hands-on leadership approach that had earned him respect throughout the business world. She would discover that the simple gold wedding band he'd worn, the one she'd felt embarrassed by when her friends showed off their diamonds, had been his grandfather's, worth more in sentimental value than any rock Richard could have bought her. She would find out that Nathan had been planning to reveal his identity on their 5th anniversary, believing that 5 years would prove her love was real and enduring. She would learn that he'd been actively involved in every major decision at Sterling Industries, that every success her father had claimed was at least partially Nathan's vision and strategy. But tonight, sitting at her family's dinner table with divorce papers and $12,000 to her name, Olivia understood only one thing with terrible clarity. She had been married to an extraordinary man who'd offered her everything that mattered, and she'd thrown it away for the illusion of something better. She'd been so focused on climbing higher that she'd never looked down to see she was already standing on the summit. Nathan Cole would go on to be fine. Men like him always were. He had options, resources, and a lifetime of opportunities stretching before him. But Olivia Sterling, soon to be Olivia Sterling again, had just learned the most expensive lesson of her life, and the tuition had cost her everything she'd never known she had. The really devastating part, the thing that would haunt her through all the long nights in Singapore and beyond, was the memory of Nathan's eyes when he looked at her tonight. Not angry, not vindictive, just tired and sad. He'd given her 3 years to see him, really see him, and she'd looked right through him the entire time, searching for something bigger, something better, something that would make her family proud and her friends jealous. She'd found it too. He'd been there all along, hiding in plain sight, waiting for her to notice. And when she'd finally shown her true colors, when she'd chosen money over character and status over substance, Nathan had simply stepped back and let her walk away from the best thing that had ever happened to her. That was what wealth and power really bought, Olivia realized. Not the ability to hurt people or destroy them, but the freedom to walk away with dignity intact. Nathan didn't need to punish her because her own choices had already done that. He didn't need to make her suffer because knowing what she'd lost would be suffering enough. As her family erupted into arguments about strategies and next steps, as her mother planned how they'd economize, and her father contacted lawyers to review his contracts, Olivia sat silent in the ruins of the life she'd destroyed with her own hands. The divorce papers represented her freedom, her choice, her victory in leaving a man she'd thought beneath her. But they also represented the death of possibility, the end of a love story that could have been epic if she'd just been brave enough to see past her own prejudices and fears. Nathan Cole had been nobody to her, and that had been exactly the point. He'd wanted to be chosen for being nobody, for being just Nathan, and she'd failed that test so completely that there was no redemption, no second chance, no way back from the edge she'd thrown herself over. The multi-billionaire she'd divorced to marry a failing entrepreneur, the owner of her family's entire livelihood, the man who'd loved her enough to hide himself and risk everything, only to watch her choose the first shiny counterfeit that came along. Olivia had wanted to trade up, and instead she traded away the only real thing she'd ever had. And what Nathan had done, signing those papers, sending that transfer, restructuring her family's positions, exiling her to Singapore, hadn't shocked her because it was cruel. It shocked her because it was kind, measured, and far more merciful than she deserved. He could have destroyed them all with a word, but instead he'd given them exactly what they'd earned, no more and no less. That was the mark of true power, the restraint to use it precisely and the wisdom to know when walking away was the strongest move of all. In the end, Olivia Sterling had gotten exactly what she'd asked for at this family dinner. She was free, single, and bound for a prestigious position in an exotic location. She had her independence, her career, and the satisfaction of knowing she'd chosen her own path. What she didn't have, what she'd never have again, was Nathan Cole, the man who'd been everything while pretending to be nothing, who'd loved her enough to let her make her own mistakes, and who'd finally stopped pretending just long enough to show her what real power looked like when it stood up and walked out the door. 18 months after that catastrophic family dinner, Olivia Sterling stood in her corner office on the 42nd floor of Cole Holdings' Singapore Tower, watching the sunset paint the city skyline in shades of amber and rose. The irony of her location wasn't lost on her. She'd fled halfway around the world to escape Nathan Cole, only to spend every working day inside a building that bore his name. The expansion project had been grueling and transformative. She'd thrown herself into the work with the desperation of someone trying to outrun her own thoughts. And somewhere along the way, she discovered she was actually good at leading people when she wasn't constantly measuring herself against impossible standards. The team she'd built here respected her for her decisions, her vision, her willingness to work alongside them rather than above them. For the first time in her life, Olivia understood what Nathan had been trying to show her about the difference between position and character. Her phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. Flying into Singapore tomorrow for the quarterly review. Dinner? Tyler had thrived under Nathan's mentorship, growing from the overlooked younger brother into a confident CEO who'd increased Sterling Industries' profitability by 38%. He and Nathan spoke regularly, and Olivia knew her brother had become something like the protege Nathan had perhaps hoped to find in his own family. The relationship stung, but she was genuinely happy for Tyler. At least someone had managed to learn the lessons she'd ignored. Her father Douglas had retired quietly, taking a consulting position that kept him comfortable but humbled. Patricia had adjusted to their smaller house with surprising grace. and Olivia suspected the experience had actually strengthened her parents' marriage by stripping away the pretense that had always surrounded them. James had quit after 6 months, unable to handle working his way up legitimately, and now ran a small investment firm that was moderately successful, but nothing like the empire he'd once imagined leading. As for Richard Blackwood, Olivia had heard through the business gossip network that he'd filed for bankruptcy and moved to his family's estate in Connecticut, living off relatives while trying to rebuild his reputation. She occasionally wondered if he thought about that dinner, if he understood that they'd both been exposed that night, him as a fraud and her as a fool. The office door opened, and Melissa Chen, Olivia's assistant, poked her head in. "Ms. Sterling, Mr. Cole is here for the site inspection. He's waiting in the conference room." Olivia's heart stuttered. "Nathan is here? In Singapore?" "He arrived this morning. Didn't you see the memo about his Asia-Pacific tour? He's visiting all the regional offices this month." Melissa's expression was carefully neutral. But everyone in the company knew the story of Nathan Cole's secret marriage and dramatic divorce. It had become corporate legend, whispered in break rooms and used as a cautionary tale in business school case studies about the importance of seeing beyond surface appearances. "I must have missed it," Olivia said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Give me 5 minutes, then show him in." She used those 5 minutes to study her reflection in the window's glass. She looked different than she had 18 months ago. Leaner from the long hours, more confident in her posture, wearing her power with less desperation. Her hair was shorter, practical rather than styled for impression. She'd stopped wearing the designer labels that had once defined her worth, finding that people respected her just as much in well-tailored professional clothing that didn't scream excess. Singapore had changed her, but the real transformation had started that night at her family's dinner table when she'd watched everything she thought she wanted crumble into ash. Sometimes growth required burning down completely first. The conference room door opened, and Nathan walked in, and Olivia's breath caught despite her preparations. He looked exactly as he had at those Sunday dinners. Same worn jacket, same understated presence, and yet completely different because now she could see what had always been there beneath the surface. The quiet authority, the watchful intelligence, the confidence of someone who never needed to prove anything because he already knew his own worth. "Hello, Olivia," Nathan said, his tone professionally cordial. "Thank you for meeting with me. I know this must be awkward." "It's your company," Olivia replied, gesturing for him to sit. "You can meet with whoever you want, though I notice you still dress like you're about to drive for a rideshare service." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Old habits. I find that people are more honest with me when I don't look like I can afford to buy and sell them. Speaking of which, Tyler tells me you've been doing exceptional work here. The Singapore expansion has exceeded every projection." "I had good incentive to succeed," Olivia said quietly. "Running away from your mistakes is exhausting. Building something worthwhile is actually easier." Nathan pulled out a tablet, bringing up spreadsheets and performance metrics, and for 20 minutes they discussed the business with the ease of two professionals who understood their respective roles. Olivia found herself relaxing into the conversation, impressed despite herself by how Nathan could shift seamlessly between strategic vision and operational detail. This was the real Nathan Cole, the man she'd never bothered to look for during their marriage. When the formal review concluded, silence settled between them, heavy with unspoken history. Nathan closed his tablet and studied her with those dark eyes that had once looked at her with such hope. "You're happy here." It wasn't a question, but Olivia answered anyway. "I'm better here. I don't know if that's the same as happy, but it's something. I've learned a lot about myself, most of it uncomfortable." "Growth usually is uncomfortable," Nathan agreed. "That's why so few people choose it." "I didn't choose it," Olivia admitted. "You chose it for me. Sending me here was the kindest cruelty anyone's ever inflicted on me. I hated you for it at first, but now I understand. You gave me the chance to become someone worth being, away from all the expectations and judgments that had defined me for so long." Nathan leaned back in his chair, and for a moment the professional mask slipped, revealing something wounded beneath. "I never wanted to hurt you, Olivia. Even after everything, even when you chose Richard, I just wanted you to find whatever would make you whole. If that couldn't be me, then at least it could be some version of yourself you were proud of. Were you ever really nobody? Olivia asked suddenly. Or was it all just an extended test that I failed? I was always myself, Nathan said firmly. The money was hidden, but everything else was real. My values, my approach to life, my desire for a genuine partnership, none of that was pretense. I worked those jobs because I believe in understanding every level of the businesses I own. I lived modestly because excess has never interested me. I wanted someone who could love that life, who could see the richness and simplicity. That wasn't a test, Olivia. That was me showing you exactly who I was and hoping it would be enough. It was enough, Olivia whispered. God, Nathan, it was always enough. I was just too stupid and scared to see it. I'd been taught my whole life that worth equals wealth, that success means status. And I couldn't imagine that the most successful man I'd ever meet would be sitting across from me at breakfast, eating cereal from the discount grocery store. Nathan's laugh was soft and sad. Do you know what I do now? I still work construction sometimes, still drive for ride shares when I need to think. I still eat discount cereal and wear comfortable clothes. Having money didn't change who I am, Olivia. It just gave me the freedom to be myself without apology. You could have had that freedom too, with me, if you'd wanted it. I know, Olivia said, tears threatening despite her determination to stay professional. I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life knowing it. I traded a real diamond for a piece of glass because the glass sparkled more obviously. That's going to be my legacy. The woman who was too blind to see what she had until she'd already thrown it away. Nathan stood, preparing to leave, and Olivia felt panic rise in her chest. This might be the last time they ever spoke privately, the last chance to say the things that had been burning inside her for 18 months. Wait, she said urgently. Please, just wait a moment. He paused, waiting, and Olivia forced herself to say what needed to be said, even though she had no right to say it and no expectation of what might come from the words. I'm sorry. For all of it. For the affair. For the humiliation at that dinner. For never seeing you. For choosing Richard's illusion over your reality. I'm sorry for wasting 3 years of your life on someone who wasn't capable of appreciating what she had. You deserve so much better than what I gave you. And I hope whoever you choose next, if you choose anyone, knows exactly how lucky they are. Nathan's expression softened into something that looked almost like fondness. You weren't a waste, Olivia. You were a lesson, same as I was for you. I learned that hiding who you are, even for good reasons, creates a foundation of omission that can't support real intimacy. I learned that you can't love someone into seeing you. They have to choose to look. And I learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone go to find their own path, even when it breaks your heart. Have you found someone? Olivia asked, knowing she had no right to the answer, but needing to know anyway. Someone who sees you the way I should have? Nathan smiled, and it was genuine, reaching his eyes in a way Olivia didn't remember seeing during their marriage. I've found peace. I've found purpose. I've found that I'm actually content being alone rather than being invisible in someone else's life. Maybe someday I'll meet someone who wants to build something together. But I'm not looking. I'm just living, Olivia, being myself without apology or pretense. It's remarkably freeing. He moved toward the door, and Olivia knew with crushing finality that this was goodbye, not just to this conversation, but to whatever threads had still connected them. Nathan, she called out once more, for what it's worth, I see you now. Everything you are, everything you were trying to show me. I see it, and it's magnificent. Nathan turned back one last time, his hand on the door handle, his expression unreadable. Thank you for that. But Olivia, the person who really needs to see you is you, not who your family wanted you to be, not who society told you to become, just you, messy and complicated and figuring it out as you go. That's the work. That's what Singapore is really about. And from what I can see, you're doing it. Keep going. Then he was gone, leaving Olivia alone in the conference room with the sunset and her thoughts. She sat down heavily, processing the conversation, understanding that closure felt nothing like she'd imagined. There was no dramatic reconciliation, No second chance. No Hollywood ending where they fell into each other's arms and fixed what had been irretrievably broken. There was just honesty, kindness, in two people who'd taught each other painful lessons, moving forward on separate paths. Her phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from Nathan, sent just moments ago, with no subject line. Olivia opened it with trembling fingers. Olivia, I'm transferring full operational control of the Singapore office to you, effective immediately. You've earned it. The board meeting is next month. I'm recommending you for Regional Director of Asia Pacific Operations, not because of our history, but because you've proven yourself capable of the role. What you choose to do with this opportunity is entirely up to you, but I believe you'll make the right choice. You usually do, eventually. Best regards, Nathan. Attached was a document outlining the promotion, the responsibilities, the substantial salary increase, and the autonomy that came with the position. It was everything Olivia had once thought she wanted: power, prestige, recognition. But it came without conditions, without strings, without any expectation that she owed Nathan anything beyond professional competence. This was his final gift to her, she realized. Not reconciliation or forgiveness or even friendship, but the chance to prove to herself that she was more than her worst mistakes. He was betting on her potential, investing in who she could become rather than punishing her for who she'd been. It was the kind of generosity that only someone truly secure in themselves could offer, giving freely without needing anything in return. Melissa knocked and entered, finding Olivia staring at her phone with tears streaming down her face. Miss Sterling, are you okay? Did Mr. Cole— I'm fine, Olivia said, laughing and crying simultaneously. Actually, I'm better than fine. I think I just received the closure I needed, even though it looks nothing like what I thought I wanted. That evening, Olivia met Tyler for dinner at a rooftop restaurant overlooking Marina Bay. Her brother had filled out since becoming CEO, carrying himself with new confidence but without the arrogance that had once characterized their family. You saw Nathan today, he said without preamble. How was it? Devastating and healing at the same time, Olivia replied. He's offering me regional director. He's trusting me with a significant portion of his empire after everything I did to him. How is he capable of that kind of grace? Tyler sipped his wine thoughtfully. You know what Nathan told me once? He said that holding grudges is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. He genuinely wants people to succeed, even people who've hurt him, because their success doesn't diminish him in any way. That's what real confidence looks like, being able to celebrate others without feeling threatened. I was married to him for 3 years and never understood that, Olivia said quietly. I was so busy comparing myself to everyone around me, so focused on climbing higher, that I never stopped to ask why I was climbing or what I thought I'd find at the top. And now, Tyler asked, what do you see at the top? Olivia looked out at the glittering city, thinking about the team she'd built, the projects she'd launched, the person she was slowly becoming. Now I see that there is no top. There's just the work, the people, the daily choice to be someone you're proud of being. Nathan tried to teach me that, but I had to lose everything to learn it. Some of us are slow learners. He asks about you, you know, Tyler said carefully, not in a pining way, just genuine interest in how you're doing. I think he wants you to be happy, Liv. He always did. I know, Olivia replied. That's what makes it hurt so much. He loved me enough to let me make my own mistakes and discover my own path, even when it meant watching me walk away from him. That's a kind of love I didn't even know existed. I thought love was possession, control, needing someone. I didn't understand it could be wanting someone to flourish, even if that flourishing happens without you. They finished dinner discussing family news. Their parents were doing well. James had actually found success in a smaller role that suited his actual abilities. The company was thriving under Tyler's leadership. The Sterling family had survived their fall from grace and emerged more authentic, more connected, more humble. Sometimes destruction was required before reconstruction could begin. Walking back to her apartment that night, Olivia passed the construction site where Cole Holdings was building a new sustainable housing complex. Workers in worn jackets and practical clothes were securing the site for the evening, and for just a moment, she could imagine Nathan among them, choosing to work with his hands because he believed in understanding every aspect of the businesses he owned. She'd married a man who found meaning in simplicity and tried to change him into someone who'd impress her family. She'd valued appearance over substance, status over character, other people's opinions over her own judgment. But Singapore had taught her to see differently, and Nathan's final act of faith in her, offering the promotion despite their history, was a reminder that growth was always possible, redemption always available to those willing to do the work. Olivia would never get Nathan back. That ship had sailed the moment she'd handed him divorce papers at her family's dinner table. But she could honor what he'd tried to teach her by becoming someone who valued the right things, who saw people for who they were rather than what they appeared to be, who built her life on authenticity rather than appearance. 3 years later, when Olivia accepted an award for ethical business leadership at an international conference, she saw Nathan in the audience. He was sitting in the back row, wearing his worn jacket, smiling with genuine pride that had nothing to do with ego or ownership. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and Olivia understood with perfect clarity that this was Nathan's victory too. Not because she'd succeeded in his company, but because she'd finally learned to value character over status, substance over shine. She would never stop regretting what she'd lost, but she would also never stop being grateful for what she'd learned. Nathan Cole had given her the most expensive gift imaginable, not his billions, but the mirror that forced her to see herself clearly. Some people never get that gift. Some people spend their entire lives chasing illusions without ever waking up to reality. Olivia had woken up finally, and though the awakening had cost her everything she'd never known she had, it had also given her the only thing that mattered, the chance to become someone she could respect when she looked in the mirror each morning. That was Nathan's real legacy in her life, not the promotion or the opportunity, but the transformation from someone who measured worth by external validation to someone who'd learned to value the quiet dignity of being genuinely herself. And somewhere in Singapore's glittering skyline, in an office bearing the name Cole Holdings, a woman who'd once been too blind to see continued the work of building something meaningful. Not to impress anyone, not to prove anything, but simply because it mattered. That was the real happy ending, Olivia had discovered. Not reconciliation or romance, but redemption through the daily choice to be better than she'd been, to see more clearly than she'd seen, to value what truly mattered even when no one was watching and no one would ever know. Nathan had taught her that lesson without saying a word, and she would spend the rest of her life grateful for it, even as she mourned the price of learning it so late.